Hey friends, my name is Megan and welcome to episode 70 of a Naughty Mess Knitting podcast. Okay, we have a lot of things going on. It is December 5th. That's wild. This year has totally flown by. It's been so fast. Okay, I have for you today a normal rundown of our things for anyone who's new is finished objects, what I'm wearing, which this week is the same, but also other finished objects. If I have any spinning updates, which I do not this week, acquisitions, books, whips. Yeah, not necessarily in that order, definitely not in that order, but you know, we'll get through all these things. And this week, though, a special thing is the acquisitions will be things you've already heard about but not seen, which is my advents. So I will take time before I actually show anything and give you like a more than 10-second like spoiler. And I'll also make it a chapter. So like I usually make acquisitions a chapter at the bottom anyway, but you can just skip ahead if you don't want to see both of them. I am going to clump them together though, because that's, yeah, easy for me. So let's get into it. I have so many things to share. We're winding down the year and hopefully the projects. I do have two things I will still cast on this year. I'll talk about these in the beginning because I don't know, sometimes I get distracted at the end. I am still going to cast on Christmas Eve socks. So that's the spin I did a couple weeks ago, which is this vintage Christmas skein from Created by LCB. And I have 4 other friends who are spinning or have spun this to make socks. Mine is the thickest. I have like a DK weight sock yarn. Theirs is all, I think, gonna be like fingering or sport fingering. So, but we'll cast on together Christmas Eve. And then I will also cast on, we were gonna do it this week, but then Ariel couldn't make it to knit night. And also I had other things going on, like other projects to start. Also, I do have a new cast on. Anyway, so there's one more sweater I will cast on, which is a Doppio with Ariel, and we just planned for Monday. Okay, but closing out the year, I'm hoping to get some more things off my needles. Not that it's just going to be like the 2 of those things left or anything like that. I just hope to have less than 5 projects going into January. So we'll go through the whole list of projects today, and I'm not going to share all of the things, but I'll kind of give you a status if I'm not sharing why. So to start with, we'll do what I'm wearing, which is a new finished object, but not the only one this week. So that's very exciting. This is my Dornie sweater. I don't remember where I was last week. I definitely had body to do because I finished that last. And I think maybe I had a whole sleeve to do plus some of one, but the sleeves went super fast. The body was closer than I had thought. I feel very comfortable in it. It's very cute. It's so soft. Okay, I wish that you could reach through and feel this. Like, it is like very luxurious. It's soft to the touch. It's very soft on skin. I do have a tank top under here, but like that's more for heat management than anything. Like my arms are bare and it's touching them, and it's like no pricklies, no anything. It's just, it's like being wrapped in a warm hug. Like, it's so nice. I know a couple people had like expressed interest. I don't know. Maybe there are other dyers, like maybe Brandy at Long Dog has a really similar base, but this is a pretty special base. And I don't know of a lot of other like dyers that carry this and or commercial that is like exactly like this. So let's talk about, usually I do fit and then these details, but let's talk about the sizing now, and then I can get up and we can talk through that. So this is the Dornie by Rebekah, who is the Rebekah. This is a top down, and it's supposed to be air and weight, but we'll talk about the yarn in a second. You know, and we've got some like pretty traditional cables. They're like opposing twists. And then I made a size 5, which is 46 inches. Recommended ease is 0.5 inches to 4 inches. She does make a note at the bottom of like where you pick your size that if you have a large discrepancy, which she just says large, it doesn't say like more than X amount of inches, so take that what you will, between your full bust and your upper bust, then testers had better luck making a size down. And then I used 5mm needles to achieve gauge, which recommended needle size is 4.5. And this yarn is Paisley Knits Cloud, her cloud base. She has a summer cloud, and then this is just cloud, in Milford Sound, which was from her New Zealand collection, and it's like a tonal teal. Blue, teal. And it is listed on her website, I think, as bulky. And it's 70% baby alpaca, 7% merino, 23% recycled nylon. It's a single ply, but it's like a chainette yarn. And you really can't see it. You can't see the chainette, and it doesn't like dye a different color, the chainette, like as opposed to like the cotton, like merino filled ones. And it's 284 yards for 100 grams. So you get quite a lot of yardage, but for a bulky weight, because a lot of bulky weight yarns for 100 grams, you're going to get like 110 yards or whatever. And this is an Aran weight sweater, but I got gauge. I really hit gauge pretty well. I think my row gauge is a little bit off compared to the pattern, but we can talk about that in a second. So let me stand up so we can look at it. Okay, here we are. So cute, right? It's like a good length. For sure, it's a good length. Like it hits right above the fullest part of my hip. So I probably wouldn't want it to be much longer. I think I added a little tiny, like a 1/2 inch of length. I mean, we can go through some of the things. I don't want to give away too much of the pattern details, but you can see the sizing for her. Like, I think schematics should always be available, but I put my full measurements inside of Ravelry. It doesn't have compared to her schematics chart, but we can talk through some of that. So, yeah, here it is. I think the fit is great. It is closer fitting than 4 inches, right? Like I have a -1 inch ease over my bust, which you can kind of tell, like it doesn't lift much here at the armpits if I lift my arms. Obviously, like it's stretchy, like it's a knit fabric. It's not like sucked to me or structured where you can't see that there's movement. But yeah, I do. So the large discrepancy between your upper bust and your full bust, I have about 4 inches. So a lot of times I'll do the first cup size, depending on how people do that, if they're doing any kind of bust darts. Sometimes the second, it sort of depends. And so because of that, I thought I might as well try to do something that would fit closer here to give me less like armpit gaping. And I think that's great. It was a good decision because it doesn't, like, it fits snugly, but it doesn't feel tight. I also have a smaller waist than bust, so it still drapes nicely, like it's not like pulling or doing anything weird here, which is nice. I know not all bodies are created equal, so like whatever you're comfortable with, like, but you know, measurement wise, this worked out with her recommendation. Okay, so you can see here how these like front ones are built, and I can go over construction again in a minute. But they, you know, you're gonna get in the long cable, so you can tell your front from your back, though it is a rather high neckline. Obviously you could adjust that a little bit if you did more stitches in your collar, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's look at the back. It's cute. It's super cute. Sleeves are a little bit long, and I can, we're going to talk about blocking as our like tip or topic of the week this week, but these I did not pin, and I also didn't have the space to like kind of force them back into shape. So they blocked a tiny bit longer than they were, but only a little bit, just like actually hanging off of the drying rack where it was. And I didn't get a lot of like extra growth. A little bit, it goes mid-hand, but I actually feel like that's super comfortable and very cozy for this make. Like this is a warm hug. So it's perfect. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna sit back down. I actually have something else to show you, and I don't want to stand up for it, so I might not. I'm actually gonna, I'll show you. We'll talk about it in a second. Anyway, back to this. Okay, let's talk measurements. So I made a size 5, which was supposed to be 46 inches. My full bust is 46 inches. My length from underarm to the hem is 12.5, which I think that's where I got a little bit of extra length, but I'm pretty sure this is not in the schematic. There's like very few measurements. This is one of her first patterns, so there's very few measurements in the schematic, but it's like your yoke length, which I didn't even really measure because I don't think it's that useful, but it's, you know, what fits here. So this is like supposed to be 8 something, which is roughly what it is. But what I put into Ravelry was the length from my underarm to hem, from the top of the shoulder to hem, which I think that also gives people like some information, because that's like how it will fit your full torso. This is 21 inches, and which makes sense with what measurements were. Which makes me think that, like, I don't know, it's hard to measure your arm side because you're sort of just like laying it flat and hoping that's like middle-ish. Mine was a little bit longer, but like that's a different measurement than from like the top of your shoulder down. Anyway, the sleeve length from underarm is also not listed in the pattern, but you know, she tells you what to get to, and then you add 2 inches of hem or of cuff, which, so I'm about on, maybe a little bit longer than because of blocking, but this is 18.5 inches. And then sleeve circumference at bicep is, for me, it's like 15-ish inches, which I guess that gives me almost negative ease on my bicep, but it's also not, it's very, the cables are stretchy, so like it doesn't feel like it's not like tight on my bicep. By pattern, it was supposed to be like 16 something, but again, I did not block these to stretch the cables at all. And I think if I had more space to block this particular sweater, I would have stretched them out a little bit, and they would have blocked slightly shorter, slightly wider. I like how it fits, so it's fine. Sleeve circumference at cuff is like 8.5 inches, which is fine. Not listed on the pattern. Okay, my gauge. I was at the correct stitch gauge, measured in pattern, and also that's sort of tricky because that depends on if you're between like larger of the sort of ribbed section, or, you know, if you measure over 2 cables versus like 1 and less of 1, I don't know, whatever. I think I did it a couple places, and so 18 stitches, correct. My row gauge, however, is somewhere between 22 and 23 rows per 4 inches. I put 22 in Ravelry just because that's a better sort of estimate. And it was supposed to be 26. So I definitely, so my yoke must be longer, but it doesn't feel a lot longer. But I also had to do less rows for my body. And I did say, I thought like the sleeve was growing too fast, so I made the decreases, like I made them more frequent than the pattern has suggested. That's really the only mod I made. And they're perfect. So, okay. Modifications, none, other than that little sleeve change just to match gauge. This is knit top down. You start flat and you create stitches, and then you cast on across after, you know, like you're creating down both sides, and then you cast on across, and then you just have raglan lines, right? You're just growing in a raglan. Then you go up and pick up your collar and pick up your sleeves plus your underarm stitches. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, then it's just top down. Cables are, like I said yesterday, last week, I think, that this is like a less frequent cable repeat. I've been doing a lot of cable patterns where there's either, like the Belle Mullet had cables every 2 rows because they were like, the crisscrosses went more frequently than the rest of the pattern. Though then there was a whole section of the crisscrosses that didn't have any cables. This is, you know, very standardly every 8 rows, but I've been doing a lot where it's like 4 rows or more frequent. And that feels like a lot of cabling because they're just slower rows. There's nothing you can do about that. It's just how it is. But the effect is so beautiful. It's so nice. I think it's funny because on camera, this one cable looks like less plump than the others. And I think it's just like the way that lean is. Like this is picking up the shadows differently, just like the way my light is in my office, because this one looks more shallow too. In real life, they look very even. This sweater used 4 balls of yarn. I used 399 grams, which was not even 4 full balls because there was a little bit of overage. It was 1136 yards. This, and this is a size 5. And granted, I was a little off gauge, so like I would still stick close to the estimates in the pattern. But somebody did ask me, like, how did I do the sub for yarn? And I mostly went off yardage, but I had also talked to Coley about like how much she used. And For size 5 in Rebekah's pattern, it says 1377 yards needed. And there's usually a 10 to 15% overage. If you take 15% away from 1377, it's 1170. And what did I just say I used? 1136. So I was actually pretty dead on with with number of yards. I have a whole skein of this left plus a little bit, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe a hat or something. Maybe not for myself, but maybe for myself because it's so cozy. Okay, so like I like to do at the end of projects is give a couple of, I don't know, ratings. I don't have like a hard scale. Maybe I'll do that for next year because that would be fun. But like, would I make it again is a good question. And then like, you know, what did I think about the pattern and the yarn? So, and the fit. So like making this was, like I just said about the cables, fun. It was engaging, but not hard. And it was quick. The gauge is great. It's quick. Instructions were easy to follow. Nothing complicated about this one. There is short row shaping, which I appreciate. So I'm not like being choked by the collar, even though it's high. And the fit so far, like I've only worn it a little bit before this episode, is very comfortable, easy. It's like slightly relaxed raglan, but it's not oversized, and I love it. Would I make it again? I don't know that I need a ton of Aran weight cable sweaters, but would I make it again in this exact yarn? Probably. If this one ever got super pilly, or I just decide I want like another color one, I would totally make it again. I would also make this one for a friend because it did not take that much yarn and it was very quick and it's enjoyable. Now this yarn, I would absolutely 1000% make like tons of projects in this. It's so great. You have to catch them in like a Coley collection though, because again, I don't really know if you know anyone else who has this, like any dyers that have this mix, please, by all means, put them below. Okay, that is finished object number 1. Let's talk about the second thing I finished this week, which is what I talked about last week, and I had not cast them on because I filmed on Wednesday, and the knit along started on Thursday, and it was the Andrea Mowry like fall knit along, which was for her new pattern. I think it's a new pattern, Oxbow Socks, and it was in conjunction with like Farmer's Daughter fibers, though you didn't have to use their yarn or anything. I guess I could have, but I let Theo pick out her own colors for this. Really, she got distracted and she only picked the hot pink. This is in my neon era, and which I have some leftovers from my brownstone beanie, like very few leftovers, so it wasn't enough to do the whole socks in them, so I just picked something that was in a color that she also likes, which is this beautiful teal. Are you guys shocked and surprised I gave someone else a teal or greenish knit? This is like a dark greeny teal. And this, I actually have zero idea what this yarn is. This, I got a like 50-gram ball from somebody's leftover socks or something like that. Anyway, I made the toddler size for Theo, and that was allowed for the knit along. It was like any of the 5 sizes in any color combination, any yarn, and you could post in the like talk about your knit section, but then there was a no chat finished object thread also. I did post in there. I did not win any of the prizes, but it was like worth it for the gamble because the like grand prize was a free year of Farmer's Daughter Fibers sock club, which I don't need the sock club, but like 12 free sock sets would be an amazing gift. Even the second one of Andrea Mowry patterns would have been good, but I didn't win. It was fun though, and these actually were not that stressful, and Theo was so happy to have them. I did steal them so I could film and talk about them, and she will not keep them on her feet. She doesn't keep any socks on her feet, but she likes to put them on, so that's a win. They do fit her though. They're not snug on her foot, but like following the pattern, it was already like slightly big in width, so I just made them also just a tiny bit long, so as her foot grows they'll like fill it out pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about it. These are cuff down, and like I said, this is size 1 in the pattern. I was picking off winter hair earlier. Sorry if that's what you saw me doing. So they're really cute. And this pattern is pretty simple. So you do have you do a tubular cast on, and then it's a 1x1 cuff at the top. And you don't have to have this color change, but that is like one of the options written into the pattern. And then you do the pattern, and the pattern itself is kind of hard to see in this like speckly yarn here. So you can kind of see it creates this like, it's sort of like a broken moss stitchy look. Yeah, I don't know. It's cute. Actually, Ariel did these socks too. And you can, if you go to Airy Knits and you watch her podcast, she didn't finish them last week. So she'll talk about them again this week, but she did have one finished sock last week in her episode. And you can see the pattern so much better on a tonal. Also, it's a sport weight, so like you can really see the pattern. Like it just plumps up a little bit. Anyway, the heel is a heel flapping gusset, and the heel flap is also remains in pattern, which is really fun and is almost, you know, like a ribby, like a broken ribby type thing. So it looks great in pattern. And then you do the heel flap. The sole of the sock is stockinette. And then you have the option of, or not, switching to a toe color. I would not recommend doing your heel flap in like a contrasting color because it's in pattern. You could just swap that if you wanted and just do a plain one or do a ribbed. But I do love, like, I like the look of this. I think this is so cute. So I have 2 little socks, and these are baby sized, and Theo loves them. Oh. I didn't put yarn usage in for her yet, but I have to put it in the tracker, so I will get it into Ravelry, but it was, you know, not a lot, like 30 grams or less for the main part, less, maybe like 20 something, and then I'd probably use like 5 for the contrast. It was a very little, and this is fingering weight, and the pattern has options for sport and fingering, and it does actually, like, it's fully 2 separate pieces. So it was like, if you have fingering weight, follow this. If you have sport, follow this, because you have a different number of cast on stitches, so you're doing a different thing. Pattern repeat, and like the texture itself is the same. Okay, that's finished object number 2. It was fun. Would I do it again? Possibly. It depends on the pattern, honestly. I'm not going to just say yes because it's a challenge. I liked these. Theo was asking for socks. I figured that'd be a good excuse for me to get them done. I would make her socks again. When I make them for myself, I would just have to have a lot less on the needles to do that. This was like a great, because I actually didn't have anything like easily mobile of my own like sweater whips. And I was able to knit a little on Thanksgiving Day while family was there. And so having these little tiny guys next to me was pretty fun and easy. And I finished the first one early Friday and the second one Saturday night, I think. So I was done before Sunday, which was nice. So, I mean, and they're little kid socks are little. So as we know, I like to review a pattern. This one, or like the whole make. So I love this, you know, pink and green tealy yarn. If anyone knows what this yarn is, please tell me. Again, I think I got this from a D-stash, and I just literally have no idea. It's so cute. I liked this pattern. I would make them for myself. I would definitely do this one in a tonal though. I would probably not make it again with a variegated, because it sort of just, it's like a little bit of a waste. Like I would rather use a variegated with just like a regular ribbing if I was going to do that, so that you know, you're not missing anything. I mean, the speckling looks nice still with this pattern. It's just, I think the pattern itself would pop more with a tonal. I would like to try the sport version because I have DK weight socks and I have fingering weight socks, and I think, hey, it'd be fun to have a sport weight sock. And that's all. So great pattern. I mean, Andrew Mowry socks are, they're socks. There's nothing like really crazy about the pattern. It's written pretty easily. It's easy to understand instructions. Nothing about it was hard or challenging. So good. Okay. I have finished the most gargantuan project that I've ever made. I think that's true. I'm not exaggerating. You have seen these, nearly all of them in their entirety or, you know, individuality. And now, folks, I can share. And this is the one I don't want to stand up again because I can't possibly get far enough away. So this is the Culmination Blanket by Lindsay Fowler. What I will say is after I hold it up for us to like look at some of it, I will put a screenshot up. So just wait a little. But I'll put a screenshot up of the full thing on the floor. Like I don't even know how I can get a picture of this whole thing. So I will try in my house. I have to stand so far away from it. So it is enormous. There's no top or bottom, but let me just grab one side. Hold, please. You guys, it's so heavy. Okay, let's actually just go row by row so we can see all of it. You can't even see all of it. Here's a corner. Here's another corner. This orange guy's a corner. Okay. We can see row 2. Fun. I'm not even kidding. This thing weighs a ton. Here's 4 and 5, or 3 and 4. And then we have 2 more. Okay. And then 5 and 6. I don't know how much you can see because I can't see anything, but that's a lot. It's a lot of blanket. It is a 6 by 6. Last week I said I had 30 squares done. I lied because when I went back and counted them, and they were squished kind of like in this little bin thing I had like folded them in 4, like in half and half, and then stuck them in kind of envelope style. And because they were squished like that, and I have a lot that are semi-similar in color, I must have miscounted. So the last square I showed you last week was partially done. I honestly couldn't tell you where all of them are. Oh, partially done was this one actually. And this ended up being 31. Then I laid them out on the ground to see, and I figured out when I laid them out on the ground. So I laid them out on the ground and I was like, oh, just kidding. But I realized I had laid them out previously when I was like looking at the configuration 6 wide, and I did like the wider width. The picture for configuration is 5 wide by 6 tall. Because I already had 31 and I was like, I will literally never do anything with this single square if I do not put it in this blanket. So I made 5 more. I made all 5 this week. And I added them in, and I don't know which ones they are. Like I know this one is one of the new ones. This one is pretty. Do I know any of the other ones that were new for the week? I think this one is a new one, and this was using some darker Malabrigo solid and some lighter. And then this one also might be a new one. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. They're all like pretty fall colors. And so yeah, I've got like I mixed those greens right in there. There's like a lot of ways I could have done this. I could have done like sort of cascading like from corner to corner color-ish story. I don't know. I could have done rows of them, but like I wanted it to be like a fun fall mixture so that no matter how it's on your lap, you're going to get some of all of the colors of fall. And I think I achieved that. It is so heavy. It's so enormous. So let's talk about this pattern first, and then let's talk about final measurements and things. So this is a square by square pattern. If you're new here and this is the first time you're seeing this monster blanket, then what a weird day for you to join. No, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about it. So this is a pattern by Lindsay Fowler. It originally is from her Salt and Timber knit book. This pattern, not all of the Salt and Timber patterns is available on Ravelry now individually. The squares are knit in a way that she gives you some adjustments, but it's like a mixture of yarns to achieve essentially like a heavy bulky. It is not, I mean, maybe it could be knit up with just like a single super bulky, but I don't think it could be knit up with just a bulky. There's your information. She gives you a suggested needle size, which is what I used, and it was 8mm. However, Ariel and Katie both also are making this, and this was a hosted knit along by Witchfire Fibers and ZZ Textiles and Lindsay Fowler together. And they did a cast on call, a midway check-in, and I think this just is supposed to be like culmination, supposed to be the end of the year. And the schedule was 2 squares per week. And then I just did that faster because this is going to be a Christmas present for my mother. And so these squares are done, and I just went to pattern, sort of with the suggested, like, every yarn weight gets a number, and you have to achieve a designated number, and with whatever mixture you have. Katie and Ariel, I think, did like slightly lower number, but then they did a 6.5 millimeter or a 6 millimeter needle, something like that. So their squares are smaller, but they're around the same density, like because their gauge is smaller, as mine. But mine are monsters, like, compared to theirs. Theirs are both cute little squares, and I have these giant, like, slightly larger than 1 foot square. The pattern is just some yarn overs and knit twos together. It's super easy, super memorizable. I think I looked at the pattern for the first like 2 to 3 squares, and then I just did from memory. And then you lay them out, and she does have a suggested sewing order, and you do not sew them together. You actually just do a crochet chain. So I shall show you closer. Let me show you, like, on this yellow one, because it really pops out. So you're supposed to start from the, the bottom. So for me, this must be the top. And actually, she doesn't tell you which, but like the only way that it worked for me and my hands going in was to have the bottom square, and then the row above, it was on top. And then you basically just enter through the same stitch on, on each square starting across, and you go through like the same hole, and then you pull through, and then you go to the next one and you pull the yarn through everything on your hook. So you're just doing a chain across, or like a slip stitch. I guess it's called a slip stitch when it's like this. But I use that Malabrigo Loro Barancaro to do this across. And you can kind of just see it's just like sitting on top there. It's just a little chain stitch, which does create like a bump, of the top one. And because you have it's just your cast off edge, or your, for me, this is my cast off edge for all of them. That's how I like laid them out. For the most part, I think my very first row, I wasn't being very picky. And then there's 1 or 2 squares where, let's see. Yeah, there's like 1 or 2 squares like this one. This must be my cast on edge. And it's just that those, it's not quite as defined, the top square's edge. Anyway, mostly it looks really great. And so you do horizontal first, and then you do the vertical line, and the vertical line is the same. So we'll go back to this square. And you are just holding one over top of the other, and you are going in the, this has a selvage edge. So you're going in the selvage edge stitch of both of them, and you're stacking them. So like the back, you can kind of see it looks the same, similar, but one edge is sitting on top, or this underneath the other. Same with the bottom here, So the maroon is on top on this side, but the orange is on top on the bottom, on the back side. Okay. So that's how that pattern works. It was easy, enjoyable. It's a great way to get rid of scraps. It's a fun way to play with colors. I've never played with marling so much, to see like weird combos come together. There's definitely some in this blanket I hate, but they look great in the blanket. Everything like looks pretty cohesive. I have a couple of cool ones, but they're mostly warm toned. And the cool ones are brown, so I thought that was also like okay. And like this like one green one is pretty cool green, but I put a lot of yellow in there. Yeah. So how big is it, and how much does it weigh? Okay, here's the deets. This thing is gargantuan. It is approximately 72 inches long by 73 inches wide, which is just a little bit, I think, due to how you sewed them together. Also, not every square is the exact same size. Because you're making a grid though, they mostly stretch to be about the same size. They don't just stretch to your biggest one either. So everything is like, give or take, around 12 inches wide. It's big. It's so big. Okay, it weighs 3,086 grams. I honestly, let me Google what that is in pounds. Okay, that is very close. It's 6.8 pounds plus a tiny bit. That's a lot. Okay, so 3,086 grams is 30, almost 31 balls of yarn. That is a lot. I had a lot of scraps. I did use some full skeins. I didn't cake up that many. I caked up some of these, like, I had some itchy stuff I bought at a festival that was like wool unlabeled. I had no idea what it was, just scratchy wool. I caked up some Malabrigo to get it, like all fall toned Malabrigo to get out of my stash. And I caked up like 4 or 5 back loop yarn and fiber. Like I had gotten a fall fade from her essentially, which I was never going to use for anything for myself to wear. And those were all in her basic worsted, or like one of them was in a DK. So this is my Mammoth Happy blanket. It is happy though. I mean, it's really heavy. It's nearly a weighted blanket. It'll be nice and warm on my mom's lap, and she can definitely, like, because it's huge, she can like double it up. So even though there are these nice eyelets in here, it won't like give her a breeze or whatever. Okay. So there's that. It's very heavy. It's very huge. It's very happy. My estimate for yardage. So I did not do like a weighing of skeins before and after and writing down what they were for every single square, because I just knew there was going to be so many and I could not. So I'll tell you a couple of things. My average for the squares, grams wise, is 84, almost 85 grams. The average yardage, and there's a mix of many things, so some of these are a lot lower and some of them are higher, is 258 yards. The min, it was 192. The max was almost 400, and that was one that I used like all fingering weights in a Surrey or something. The sum total of yards, though, I guess we talked about grams because it weighs a lot and I feel like that's impressive, but the total of yards is 9,000. This is actually not including this is 3,054 of it. It was like 30 to 40 yards to sew it together, or 30 to 40 grams to sew it together. And I didn't put that into this calculation, but for just the squares, the sum that I figured based on some averages, because I did do measurements for some of them. Then I took those measurements and used them as averages for what was in each, the composition of each of the other squares. So my estimate for yardage is 9,289.88 yards. It's a lot of yards. 9,000. That's so many yards. I didn't have to knit that much because a lot of it was held 3 to 4 times, you know, like 3 to 4 strands per. But that's crazy, right? Yeah, pretty wild. It's done. I'm really glad. It's like a relief to have like one of these square projects just totally done and like don't have to worry about anymore. It's also a Christmas present. It can also just like go and be put in a Christmas bag in the closet where presents are and not be thought about until the big day. Okay, I did another thing with squares, and so that's the end of my finished objects. I don't have any spinning to talk about this week, so we're gonna go right into whips. Here are my whips. I finished the last 2 of the, like, what I knew were gonna be colors for Heirloom Quilt Cardigan. This is the Heirloom Quilt Cardigan by Katrin Seeberger. So I knew I had these 2 because that's what I like had on my list to do. And then I picked my last one that I wanted to add in, and I had an option of like a couple that still would give me no repeats, but were not represented yet. And I decided I needed like another light skein. So, or a light square. I'm not going to add it because I might play with it a tiny bit more. But at Knit we played with placement of squares, and Charlotte was like, I did not do as much work on the placement of squares, but hers were more unique. And because she was using an advent, so there was like more different background colors and more different square middle colors, even though all of them, she could do a grid a little bit because they were all, if they were using the advent mini for the star, they were using the same background color, all of them. And if they were using the fun background color, the mini for the background color, it was all the same blue for the star. So I think that like requires a little less finessing, but when you lay these out, you don't obviously want like a ton of coral in just one area, or this is called tiger lily. You don't want a ton of that all in one area, right? Or like a bunch of just the tan only on one side and not somewhere else. So a little bit of is like visually looking and also figuring out what you have in a line and a row. So I played that game with everybody and they were super helpful, and we came to a really good place. And I think there's just like one side of it I might want to tweak a little bit, but I'm not going to share the picture because I'm just going to sew it together and then you'll see it when you see it. But these, now all of my squares washed, blocked, ends sewn in, done. So the next step of this project is to sew it together. That is going to take me a long time, though I think I'm going to do it similar to the Culmination Blanket. I did this like pretty much, I did it in 2 sessions. And it was hard because I felt like I had to be on the floor for part of it while I was doing the horizontal. And then I moved to a chair for the vertical, but like my back hurt. And also it was really heavy, like flopping them all around in my lap. Anyway, I will sew these together. And what I'll probably do is like, I don't know, I have to find space for it, but I kind of want to keep them laid out as I go, similar to what I did for this, although the sewing is going to take a lot longer. But I'm going to maybe do horizontal first and then vertical second. That's likely what I'll do. I think that's easier. Yeah. So horizontal first, vertical second, and yeah, I'm just going to hope for the best. Try to knock it out maybe this weekend. I might have to do a pause and do it next weekend. I'm not really sure. And then we can get on to the fun stuff with the finishing. Charlotte, I think, has done hers now because she finished at Knit everything but her tubular bind off. And she did like some short rows in the collar and that was it. And the fit looks great. She tried it on for us. She had like the needles around the collar, but like you could still see how it was going to fit and it was like sitting pretty nicely. So I think that I'll follow her example. Let's talk about my Northwoods V Neck. This is a pattern by Jessie May, who is Jessie on May on Instagram. She's got tons of patterns on Ravelry. I've made a few of them and I've enjoyed them. This one is, eyelash, by recommendation of Sylvan, who made her boucle sweater when we did boucle sweaters last year, because Sylvan's a V-neck girly forever. So this is a V-neck. I did the superlative last year with my boucle, and this is the only other sweater quantity of boucle I have. I'm not connected yet, but let's talk through what's happening here. I don't know if this sheep is in the right position because I may have moved it between episodes because I don't think I showed this last week, or this is where I was last time I filmed. I don't know. But the back panel's done. This was the front right, which is what you start with, and then you do your left side. So that's where I am now. And I was kind of hoping to get joined in the round, but I just didn't. But I did do some decent amount of work on this, if this little sheepy is true. Like 2 nights ago, I finished the front side and I just like kind of painstakingly counted the back rows and the front rows. So what you can do, but it's like very annoying. You have to go really slowly. You have to kind of like catch between. I can't. Ariel's like, you can just count the backside bumps, which like you can, but I just feel like sometimes they clump together. Like certain part of stitches are really close together, so it's like hard to tell. Anyway, I sort of did it because my row gauge is off. So I did the back panel. I added a couple extra rows, but of course I did not leave myself a note. So because of how the construction for this V-neck works, and she does put a note on making it more shallow, you actually do the front side, and then you do the, or like right side, then you do the left side, then you join to the back, but you keep the V, you're keeping increasing the depth of it. So obviously if my row gauge is off, my V-neck will be a little bit more shallow anyway. I decided to just keep doing the increases as they are, as I would have if I was joining the body. And then I'm going to join the body, and I may add a couple extra and do like 1 or 2 decreases on the side, and that, so I'll keep like the stitch count the same throughout, but give myself a little bit more depth. Or I might not. Having a slightly less deep V is also okay with me, and it wouldn't be by a ton. So I'm about halfway through this panel, a little bit more than, and so I will just go on with that and hopefully be like fully joined in the round, like including the rest of the depth of my V-neck next week. That's a goal. Who knows? Because I've got a lot of things I'm doing. But I'm just like, this color is so good. It's so good. I just stop and stare at it sometimes. Oh, that's the wrong side. Yeah, I just stop and stare at it sometimes. It's so beautiful. As a reminder, I am making size 5, which is 52-inch bust. Recommended ease is 6 to 8 inches, so this is going to be a little off for me, though it's very hard to tell with boucle if I'm staying on gauge or not. In theory, I was on gauge-ish. I am using 3.5 millimeter needles. I think the recommended is 3.75, but it might be 4. Anyway, I sized down because I needed to for the boucle. My gauge now is off rows, but the stitches should be close. And I'm like maybe a whole, I might be 2 stitches per inch off. So it's like 8 stitches for 4 inches or 6 stitches for 4 inches. Anyway, it's quite a lot. But like that's boucle is like, yeah, anyway, the way that it condenses, it just functions very differently than normal yarns. This is Long Dog Yarns Boucle DK in the Battle of Helm's Deep, which was a color from her one collection. It's 250 yards for 100 grams, and it's 100% superwash merino, and I love it. I am so in love with that color. I think it's going to be so great, and it's going to be like this yummy, moody, wintry thing. So as soon as it's done, I'm going to wear it all the time. Okay. I do not have my alchemy pullover down here. I did not work on my birch, though I did something for my birch, which we'll talk about next week, but essentially just I'm evaluating what I want to change. I did not work my Traveler hoodie, but I did work on my DRK Everyday, so let's talk about that. I had cast this on last week, and I had not done a ton, maybe some of my increases in the yoke. So this is the pattern by Andrew Mowry. It came out in 2021 November. It is a top-down circular yoke sport weight pattern that's really like made for hand spun. That's like kind of why she did it. You can one of the yarns that she knitted in, or one of her samples or recommended yarns, is like, you know, through like a US mill. So it's like more milled yarn, less commercially type yarn. This is my Naughty Mess project. So this is my A Naughty Mess fiber from Yarn Jam, from Trisha at Yarn Jam, from the collaboration that happened this fall. And I spun this up in September, and I just cast on, you know, in the end of November. And I'm so in love with it. Okay, are you ready? Yes, we saw this last week, but it really looks like a sweater now, and it's so beautiful, and I love it so much. It's so happy. It's so nice and happy and gorgeous, and I love it so very, very much. It's like even better than I could ever have pictured. Okay, so let's talk about some things. I am making a size 4. This is a 46-inch bust. Okay, it says the recommended ease is 2 to 4 positive inches. And Andrea Mowry says that the picture shown of sample is on a size 2 with, or a size 2 on a person with 3 inches of positive ease. But the way that it fits her bust, and she definitely has like a number of inches between her like full bust and her upper bust, but the way that it fits her bust is how something that is negative ease fits my bust. Just like looking at the pictures and like, I just know how things fit me now that I've made enough sweaters. So I did not want to go with the size 5, which is 50 inches. And I'm sure it would have been lovely and I have enough yarn for it and it would have draped nicely, but I wanted a slightly closer fit. So especially at this like neck part that I wanted it a closer fit. I tried it on last night and it's so fun. There's often a criticism with Andrew Maury's pattern, and that's the armholes are small. And I will say that rings true for this. I think that the arm side on this is a little bit short on me. So like it's really up towards my armpit, where this is right now. That'll change when I actually pick up the stitches all the way around. But what I'm going to have to do, and I'm not mad about this because, you know, as per all patterns, you get quite a lot of, you know, gap here, is that you can fill that gap. You can naturally close it pretty easily by just picking up on either side of the gap and not messing with it. But I think I'll probably pick up 4 to 6 stitches per side or per armhole to give myself a slightly larger circumference bicep. So that's part of the criticism, is that sometimes her arm size are short and also her bicep circumference is rather small, even, you know, to the size that it's supposed to be fitting. For this one, it's like an okay size. It's just, I think that it's going to need like a little bit extra for my particular arm, which is okay. I have the room to do it, doing this top down thing and picking up, like I can even pick up between stitches. Like I'm going to be fine, but it fits nicely. And it's just like sitting over my bust exactly how I want it to be. And I'm just like so excited. So, I don't think I have a stitch marker on. I think I did. Oh, I do. So this is where I was last week. So this is actually above my armhole. So if we follow that little color line here, it was somewhere, you know, here-ish, somewhere right around my thumb, where I finished last week. And so I knit quite a lot. I finished my last increase. I think it was just one more increase I had to do, plus some rows. And then I did split for sleeves, and I did, I don't know, 2 inches almost. I'm so excited. This has like been a really great mindless knit for me. So like I went to the dentist this week and I brought this, and while I was waiting for all the things I was knitting, I'm really, really enjoying it. And that yarn is Shanico. It is Trisha's natural Shanico base. So it's the non-tweed version. There's very little left on her website, but if you do want it, she still has a couple of the tweed base in my color left over. I think it's super bouncy, super soft. I am somewhere between a sport and a DK weight for all of the skeins. So like heavy sport, light DK, which is fine for this pattern. I'm hitting gauge, and I am going to it'll just be a little bit denser, which is fine. I really, really love it. I'm so excited. It was really like when I put it on my face, I didn't know what to expect because I have some variegated sweaters, but I don't have anything that's like kind of color changing, micro stripey like that. And it's so fun. It's really fun on. It's going to be, you know, not like a statement wear, but that's almost what it feels like. It's just like, hey, I'm here and I'm beautiful. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, so I have one new cast on and the last whip to talk about this week, and that is my, I think I talked about this, that I would be doing it. This is my stripes, also an Andrew Maury pattern. Let me tell you about it. So this came out November of 2020. It's really similar in shaping to the DRK Everyday. It might even be like the same gauge or almost the same gauge. I think her original sample is 2 mohairs held together or 2 surreys held together to make it sport weight, but this also you can do in any sport weight yarn. And there's a cropped version, there's a long sleeve or a cropped sleeve version also, and there's 2 different collars. So there's a lot of options with this pattern, and I'll tell you what I've decided to do. But I'm making the same size as my DRK Everyday. So another reason is with something striped like this and horizontal stripes on a larger body, you can do whatever you're comfortable with. And I like wearing horizontal stripes. I don't care when people are like, they make you look wider, you shouldn't wear them. I actually think they're very flattering in a lot of circumstances. So I don't really believe that. I think that's a myth. Maybe it's just me and I feel comfortable with it. So whatever. but I'm making the size 4, which is 46 inches, again, because with the circular neck, I just don't want it to be baggy. I don't like the look of that personally on me and just generally. So that's the choice I'm going to make for this. Now, recommended ease is 2 to 6 inches, but I'm going to have -1. This is again of another like example of you can do whatever you want. No one's going to come arrest you for the choosing different yarn things or your yarn decisions on sizing. So do what you want. But this is made, or the yarns that I am using are also from my Long Dog Yarn 1 collection order. I am so excited about this. I will flash a picture up here of the yarns I picked in color order. This is not a great picture because this was just like taken in the upstairs of my house at night after I wound them all. But maybe I'll flash a couple pictures because I actually have a fun picture of them also in a pyramid before I wound them and then after, and they're so fun. But this is what I've decided to do with, like, this is a color order I've decided. So I'll show you what I have, which is not all of the colors, which is why I want to show you the colors. But I will tell you all of the names of the colors. I'm going to go from memory on the picture, but I think we are Gimli is the orange. Legolas is the light green. Aragorn is the dark brown. The yellow is Samwise, the dark green is Merry, and then the white is the Light of Arendelle. So most of them are fellowship colors. I did the white because I just felt like I needed another light color and not the lightest color to pull them out. I also still, so I'm like pretty, for most of the time of me making the podcast, I've been pretty set on my deep winter palette. Prior to that, not much before, I was just buying whatever yarn I wanted. And also that's fine. You can do whatever you want. But this is a way more earth tony type color for me than I'm typically going to be making for myself to wear. Gandalf was gray, grayish, gray blue. Frodo was like a really light blue, like his eye color. And then Boromir was like a maroon color. Those I obviously could have subbed in, but I played with this color palette for a long time. And I decided on 6, even though I really only needed like 5 skeins of yarn to make it. I just didn't want to like run out of any in the stripes anywhere. And I also, I just felt like this palette feels so cohesive and nice together. Even though some of those cooler tones would have felt a little bit more me now. I'm not mad about it. I'm not going to like go change, swap anything because I'm in love with the idea of this. These colors together. So this is my fellowship make. I started last night and I meant to start on the 1st, and on the 1st I wound the balls, and then it took me all the way until the 4th to start because I was really focused on getting this culmination blanket done. And I could have easily just done that this weekend and whatever, but I just wanted them to be like, stop floating in space, essentially. So here's where we are. It's so beautiful. Oh, and I'll tell you the options I've chosen. So I'm on really small needles and I just got like past an increase in the middle of this green one, which means I should have moved to bigger needles, but I needed to run out and get a longer needle, which I did during lunch today. So I have one longer Chaogu cord because I didn't have enough. I have too many projects on the needles. I could have moved something to barber cord, but also, you know my feelings on that. So I actually started with the Light of Arendelle, and that was on purpose, but also because I want the collar to be Merry, that dark green. So I have opted for option structured collar, I think is what she's like calling it even in the pattern. So the options here, you get a structured or unstructured collar, which just means like a double fold pick up after collar or a cast on and knit down. Obviously you can do whatever you want. You can even do the double fold and then knit down. But she has a little paragraph on like what to choose, and that you will get a smaller neckline and a more structured neckline fit if you pick up after. And because of things I have learned in the past couple of years, I do think I will do a crochet chain pickup because I really like how that feels and looks. And though it's like an extra step and this is kind of a lot of stitches, I think it will help with this because this is particularly wide. Like, look how, I mean, this is really open and a little bit floopy. So, and I want to bring it in. I will likely do the collar kind of early on. So I'm thinking I will do through most of my growth, and then when I'm feeling like there are just too many stitches on my needles, I'll go back and do the collar, and then I'll go and split for sleeves and finish it. But it'll like also let me see what that looks like early and how the fit is, because I really can't do anything about sleeves or know the length of sleeves and stuff until I have the neckline, because it's gonna sit so differently. The other options you get are like long sleeves and crop length or long. And that's like crop sleeves. Like one of her samples has like this kind of 3/4, like just, you know, mid forearm. I'm not sure what I'll do on that. I think that's a little bit TBD. I'll see how it's feeling. I'll see how it's feeling. I'm most likely going to do a full length and a full sleeve, but I may do a crop sleeve if I feel so inclined. But Katie and Emily both made this last year and I love their versions. Oh, so did Charlotte, and they're all great versions. But it's so cute and I am so excited, and knitting things that are stripy are so fun. And you know, you get that like quick reward kind of for changing the color, and so it's been fun already in this small part, and I imagine it'll keep me engaged and invested for the rest of it. And also I am doing my Lord of the Rings reread, and so that's very exciting and it's been great so far. And so hopefully I'll be able to, I'm actually also listening while I'm doing Battle of Helm's Deep, because that's also Lord of the Rings, and so fun. This is our acquisition section, which is going to only be spoilers for Advents. So I'm going to start with EKF. And if you do not want to see week 1 of Solstice for both tonal and variegated, which was supposed to be opened on November 30th, look away now. I'll show you again. Like, this is the box that they come in, and so I'll show you both of them. So this is 1, and 1 is the variegated and 2 is the tonal, but they're both the first week. So our variegated first week, is called Nature's Reverie, and it looks like this. It's super beautiful. I'm not going to describe it too much in case you're just looking away. And then the second, the tonal is called Contemplation, and it looks like this. And here they are together. Okay, super lovely. EKF done. If you want to rejoin, if you, I mean, I think most people honestly just open them early and not late. Either open it early and everything or on time. I don't know. Unless you're saving it as a Christmas present for yourself. I guess that could happen. So this is kind of my Christmas present to me, and that's super fun. Okay, so I'm going to do Fibre Fox next, and what I'm not going to do is I'm still not going to show you the extras. So I got some stitch markers and I got a bag, and the bag was like an opt-in thing. Maybe you couldn't opt out for the full Advent. Anyway, I have the bag, but I won't show that until the end when I do the full scan as well, which will be like after Christmas episode. But a reminder, here's our beautiful packaging. If you'd like to follow along during the week, I have been opening them every afternoon, and I will continue to do that like on the day. So today's the 5th, and I put out the 5th episode, or the 5th little mini. So I'm not going to show you in the baggies, but they come in little tiny guys that look like this, that have a number on them. This is 14. All of these are the same color. And they're all just like folded in half, and so you can pull out your little dude. So again, if you haven't been watching my stories, and I will actually put a highlight with all of them on, like, yeah, I'll do that, because if you click on it, then you have been looking for it, and I'll put like spoiler alert or something in it. But here are all 5 of our first days. So I just have until the 5th shown here. There's a pic of them up. Look at that. They're so cute. Okay, so our first one is very like the blushest of blush pinks, like, and then we're into, I don't know, this reminds me of like raspberry ice cream. Like it's got that little bit of like a darker pink tone, but it's still like pretty creamy looking. Okay. So, and like 1, 2, and 3, it's funny because they really, like, even to the eye, look pretty close, but like you can kind of tell there's just more pink on this one. Like you can kind of tell from the camera, but like with your eyeballs, they look really close, but like, yeah, I can tell. And the gradient is real. Like the gradient is going to happen. And I just can't remember if it's purple then blue or blue then purple. So I'm going to say it's probably purple next and then goes to blue and then gray. So I'm very excited for that. And so next week I'll show you the 7 days, like until the 12th. Probably just like the 6th to the 12th, but like maybe I'll flash them all up, but it's going to get harder for me to hold them all up. So we'll figure out how to do it. Maybe I'll just take a picture and then we can like discuss and look at it. But it's very cute and I love them. Okay, we're done acquisitions. Let's talk about books. So I read a lot of books, but I had a lot of time off of work so I could have audiobooks on while I did chores and other things around the house. And so I finished, also because I was working on this, I was reading some of these Irish romance books. So let's talk about that genre first. First I read The Upside of Falling by Rebekah Crane. This is about the girl who has memory loss. She like is the sole survivor of a plane crash, like a small plane, a plane crash in Ireland, and she's an American, and like they know who she is, but she doesn't have any memories, and she's like trying to run away from not even her old life, she doesn't know what it is, but like disappointing people because she doesn't remember, and maybe like try to get them to start. Anyway, of course, she falls in love with her would-be like rescuer. He like helps her like leave the hospital, but you find out there is a secret and yada yada, and it's actually, the twist was like one I figured out pretty early, but it was okay. She's a little immature of a main character. Like this was, I don't know, slightly more like young adult rom-com, like not teen. I mean, she's like 18 or 19 in it, like just younger. There were parts of the writing style I thought was like, just again, maybe a little immature. Like the pacing was not awesome. Like it was okay. It was overall, it was fine for this project that I had in mind. There was a lot of like loveliness of Ireland pointed out. Okay. Then I read one by Debbie Johnson called A Very Irish Christmas. And I've got to tell you, nowhere in the book does it tell, or in like the little forward thing, does it tell you where the book is actually happening, though you got to assume Ireland. Yeah, no, this book nearly all happens in England. There's a small part that happens in Ireland, but it's in a village where there are a lot of Irish immigrants, so they call it Little Ireland. And it's about a girl who goes to discover her roots and to escape her life a little bit. And like, I think she got like jilted at the altar. I think so. I think that was it. And she just is like lost confidence in herself, and it's her finding that again. Last of the, well, actually, there's 2 more Irish books. This one, though, I read Jewels of the Sun, which is a Gallaghers of Ardmore book by Nora Roberts. My first ever Nora Roberts read. This may be my last series, Nora Roberts series. I know she has actually a couple like romantic-y series. Maybe I would read those. These were written in like 1999, 2000, 2001, like the little trilogy. And I know things were different. I get that. And I need to like remember that as I'm reading it, because there's just like some parts of this I was like, oh, consent. Ugh. Just like there were like several parts where I'm like, so I'm feeling very cringe about it. It's pretty predictable. Okay, so the first one is about Aiden, who meets Jude, who is an American who also is trying to get in touch with her roots, although this is actually the village her grandmother was from. And so she stays in like an ancestor's cottage or whatever, and she is also had like a disastrous relationship and trying to find herself and also like find her worth and like what she wants to do, and it's fine. I kind of like, I wanted to know what happens to the siblings. So I read the second one too, which is called Tears of the Moon. And then, but I actually finished that one while doing the blanket sewed because this was already done. And now I'm in the middle of Heart of the Sea, which I've been listening to as I walk, because in the mornings with the dog, because I don't need to be thinking very hard about it. And they're all fine. It's all of the siblings. The second one was about Sean, and the third one is about Darcy. And like, these characters just like, they're lacking like a little depth. I think there's some perspective changing that that is odd, that like you get like the random bystander, sometimes you get their perspective and it's like just fluidly sort of shifts. That's actually kind of interesting. And so I think some of her side characters get depth that like, I feel like she's a little bit one note with the main characters. Like, this is the thing I do. This is all I care about. I don't care about anything else. And you're like, okay. And one thing I don't love is that also all the love stories are like, the first two chapters are like both the main characters being like, I would never marry again, or I'd fall in love, or blah, 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 for whatever reason. And then like, as soon as they even start liking each other, they're like, I'm in love, I'm all in, I'm going to get married. But there's not enough, I think, to like have impacted that decision. And it's sort of like when you know kind of situation, but like, I feel less convinced about it. Okay, so those are my Irish reads. And then I also read, and I had almost finished this prior to this week of reading, but this one is called Maybe Once, Maybe Twice by Alison Rose Greenberg. And I will say I had to spoiler myself because I was getting kind of upset with the back and forth. This book is about like Maggie Vine, who was an aspiring singer, songwriter, who essentially makes a if we're not married by 35, let's get married pact with two different people at two very different stages of her life. And so you are revisiting like years of her life and a bunch of birthdays. Cause like, if I'm not married by my 35th birthday, come find me kind of thing. And there is a lot of timeline skipping. And so the chapter names are the year that you're in. And though I could keep up with what was going on, I didn't like it very much because I feel like you knew too much going into some of the past scenarios. And then sometimes things were out of left field. And I didn't feel like the main storyline was moving ahead quickly enough. And also, it just annoyed me. It annoyed me. And the decision making that the main character goes through also annoyed me. And her feelings towards these two people also annoyed me. And so like mostly this book annoyed me, but I still wanted to know what happened and who she ended up with. So I totally just like Googled it. And then I was satisfied enough with the ending that I read it through because I was like really close to being done. And I was like, am I annoyed enough to put this down? The answer was, let me see what happens. And then I was not annoyed enough. And I did finish it. I won't tell you who she ends up with, but it was an okay conclusion. It was like a little bit rushed and kind of lame, but it was fine. I got Seas and Greetings from Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I think they both are writing on this one too. And this is like a 2.5, like a Christmas Notch in July story. So it's like between the Christmas Notch book. And then I read two Annabel Monaghan books. And these are my first Annabel Monaghan books. But one of them is called Summer Romance. And the other one's called Nora Goes Off Script. Okay, so generally, let me just tell you about these two books. Is that Annabel Monaghan is writing about divorcees who are not very old, like 30-year-old divorcees or 37, 38-year-old divorcees, who end up like that have kids who end up dealing really differently with their lives. Like it wasn't like just a recipe. I felt like they were different enough from each other. And like the way the characters dealt with things was different enough, even though it was like, this is clearly this is what she's comfortable writing about, or like felt like that would be her good like writing place. So maybe there's more, I don't know. But I really enjoy this. And Summer Romance has come up on a lot of things as like a you should read thing for me. And so I picked it up. It's about Allie, and she is in the midst of getting divorced, and she is also grieving her mother. And she meets Ethan at the dog park, and decides to start up a summer romance. And I won't give you any more details because there's like parts of this that are like a little bit like spoilers for the rest of the story. But she's got 3 kids, and her ex-husband is in the picture, and he just like a super selfish human. And she stopped sticking up for herself in her marriage, and so like she's like finding herself. She's also a professional organizer, or that's like what she was doing as her like sort of side hustle, and her life is a mess. So it's sort of like, how is she taking back her own power? And it was a really good, uplifting, fun, kind of sexy book. Like there's definitely, you know, some open door scenes. Okay, then the other one is called Nora Goes Off Script, and this is about a again, like a late 30s divorcee who, her husband left her and just like straight up left the continent, like never came back, has not seen his kids. She's got 2 kids in this one. And her kids, just like in the first one, the kids are like such a good part of the story. Like they're not too much. There's no perspective of kids really, but it's like enough. They're in there enough that it feels like that's a really functionally a family. Like the kids don't just go off and the whole story is about the mom and they're never really featured. They're in there, and weigh on their decisions, which is nice. Okay. But Nora is like a screenwriter, but she mostly does like romance, like essentially like Hallmark movie channel movies. They're really formulaic, whatever. And then she writes about her divorce, and that becomes like an actual Hollywood movie, and they're, you know, like it's super moving, whatever. And so the story is like they want to film part of it in the location that she had put, because it was like the most perfect location for this. And then I won't tell you even who she falls in love with, but there is a romance that happens after the movie trucks leave, and then there is some just like such a real and heartbreaking thing happens. Anyway, through this, she also figures out how to like keep her voice, and that she is not, Allie was way more of a mess. Like character wise, they're just so different. And yeah, I really loved, I don't know if I liked this one more. Maybe I did. I liked them both so much. I thought they were really great. Last topic for today is our little tip of the week. This is not a tip of the week. I just want to talk about blocking for a little bit. It's like a topic of the week. So this came up like on 2 or 3 different Discord chats that I'm in this week, like questions about blocking. So I want to tell you a couple of things. I have a couple of tips, things that I've learned, but also just like blocking in general. So I want to know if there's other questions you have, or like other things that you do for your own things. So first of all, I think, this is my belief, and there's some exceptions, but like all garments you make should be washed and blocked. I think they should, for the most part, be wet washed and blocked. Steaming is not the same. You can do this if you're really afraid of something stretching too much. You can spray it, like lay it out in the shape that you want on top of a towel. I would suggest you do this on top of a towel. Spray it pretty thoroughly with a water bottle and then steam it, and you'll actually like have saturated more of the fiber, but it's still not a substitute for wet blocking. I think that you can wet block any fibers. I do think there's like some when you might get really nervous about the color work, etc., and I've got some tips for that, but wetting something thoroughly and then letting it dry in that shape allows your fibers, like your fibers being knit will already crimp a little bit to that, but it allows them to settle into their shape more, and it allows your fibers between spaces and, you know, like to bloom a little bit. And most fibers, even superwash merino, will bloom a tiny bit, and it is good for your knits. Now, here's some things to note. If you're worried about color work, you can always, and I do, okay, also, I tend to block all of my things in cold to tepid water, never warm for the most part. And tepid being like, it doesn't have to be freezing cold, because you also don't want to necessarily like shock your garment. So like cold, room temperature or colder. And I let it soak, and you should let it soak for at least 15 minutes too, however long you want. You can let it in overnight, it doesn't really matter. And then I squeeze out in the basin without wringing, but like I push my garments like against the side and squeeze out as much as I can, like making a fist. I often then pull it out of the sink to the counter next to it and over the sink, squeeze without, again, you don't want to wring, you don't want to twist, you don't want to pull, but just like squeeze out as much as I can. If it is a super wash, not a lot of texture garment, I will on very rare occasion throw it into the washer. I've done this like 2 times at this point. Or if it's got acrylic in it or whatever, and spin cycle it. Only do this if your washer does not have an agitator and will like let you do spin only, not a rinse and spin, because you don't want to add water to move it all around. You just want it to like suck to the side and spin. This can still felt your garment. That's why I would only do it with superwash. After I wring it out though, normally I will lay it on a towel or 2 and I roll it up this way. And I saw this tip not that long ago. That's called like the cinnamon roll. So you roll it up whatever way you want, and then you roll it the other way. So it becomes like an actual, like very strange looking, like tall sort of roll, and then step on that. And because of the compression and way that is, you have to step on it for less time. And it also actually gets more of the water out of it. And this has worked for me really well. So I cinnamon roll it, I step on it, I stand on it a little bit. It's awkward. Sometimes I use the wall or my husband or whatever's nearby to stomp out all the water. I unroll it. And if it's still feels really damp to me, and the towel feels very saturated, I will just do it again. I will use another towel or set of towels, and I will do this. Then I lay it out. I often use a mesh blocker for mine. So like it's an Oxbow Sweater dryer. Like you can find this on Amazon or whatever. It's a little square thing that has like a mesh netting across the square, like a PVC square. And I just lay it on there. Like this thing, because of my size of garment, also like just the body fits and the arms often do not. So this one, the arms were like hanging down. Sometimes I will prop them up a little bit, or I'll try to lay them just along the sides. If it's the first time I'm washing something and I need to pin it to measurement, then I will often put my blocking mats down and I will, depending on how wet it feels and also the temperature outside and other things, I might put a towel down first, or I just put the garment right onto the blocking pads and I pin. And I have these, I have like blocker things where it's like 4 little needle pins in one. Yeah, I don't know what those are called. Anyway, I have those. And then I let it dry. Sometimes with a dehumidifier in the room, sometimes with a heater, sometimes with a fan, or sometimes just by itself in a room with a closed door, because the way our house heats, like that will dry a little bit faster. Okay. Now, other scenarios, and things to note. If it is color work, I'm worried about bleeding, or just like generally I'm worried about a lot of bleeding. I have color catchers, like the color catcher sheets, and I will put those in the water. If it is color work, I will, after lesson learned, make sure to do that in pretty cold water with a color catcher in the water before I start it. And if you're really worried, you can also add vinegar to the water, and that will like help set it a little bit. Adding vinegar to your water does not like replace finishing the set color, but there are times where like the dye just didn't exhaust quite enough, but it is set, so it's not gonna like keep bleeding. It's just that there's like a little extra you have to rinse off. Anyway, if you don't care about like if it's just all one color, you can just have your water change color a little bit. It's not gonna like, I have not had things that are set like that affect like my pants that I'm wearing or dye things around me or whatever. And then okay, so then another thing to note is like, and this was one of the questions I saw on Discord, like, do you block every time? And because I don't always like formally block it like with pins, yes, I always lay them out flat to dry. I never throw them into the dryer. But I also do not wash my garments very often. I kind of do a spring refresh where I wash a bunch of them. And because I still keep all of my knits out and they don't go into like set storage, I don't really like wash at the end of the season for like the summer stuff. But I will wash mid-season if I just think something like starting to get a little bit stinky. Also, if things are getting a little bit stinky, you can always throw them into the freezer for a couple of hours or overnight, and that will help kill whatever bacteria is on there that's stinky. But if I've really pinned something the first time and I wear it several times and I feel like I need it to go back to its shape, I will wash and block it again. Most of the time, it won't return to its very original shape. It will return to closer to what it was when it was blocked. Okay, here's another thing I have to say about like people feeling scared, being scared to block. You can manipulate your fabric before it is pinned. So oftentimes, like this one, when I pulled this out of the water and I just laid it, the torso just pulled super long. That's like what it did, right? I obviously wasn't going to just let it dry like that. So I played with it. So I laid it out and I pulled my shoulders up a little bit, and then I like pulled the body up and like flopped it a little bit so that it set back into the stitch gauge that I wanted. And I set it out and I used a measuring tape and I was like, this is approximately, but I did it on my mesh blocker. So I didn't have pins, but I was like, stretched it and I was like, this is approximately 23 inches across, which is what I wanted. And I let it just like sit there. And like usually I get a tiny bit of shrinkage. It depends on the weight of the yarn, etc. And then, and like sleeves, you've heard me say this before, is if sleeves look really long when they are wet, you can just shake them and like, again, get your stitches to sort of go back to shape and lay them to the measurements that you want. And they will stay that way. Blocking is not scary. Please do your blocking. Your knits 100% of the time will look better from blocking. They will feel better from blocking. Your fabric just lays nicer. You don't get like some of your wonky stitches and stuff will all work out, and it's good. If you have questions or other specifics or a specific scenario I didn't cover, please let me know. This is my crusade to get you to block your things. I know it's annoying, but it is what it is. Things I don't think you need to block. I do think you actually do need, or I do actually think you need to block socks eventually, but I think you can wear them first and then block them like the first time that you actually like wash them, which is fine. I do wash my socks more often, but I do not wash them after every wear, depending on like life. If I wear them out and in my shoes and I get like sweaty feet, then I will wash them. If I am just wearing them around the house for a few hours inside of slippers, which is what I tend to do, I won't wash them, but I will like, you can just kind of tell when they need to be washed, you know, a couple wears. Then, and like hats, I don't think need to be washed. Those can totally be steam blocked most of the time or not at all. Cowls probably could do with blocking most of the time, but like not totally necessary. Unless it has like lace in it. Anything with like lace or cabling, even color work, like it benefits. The stitches love to be opened up from a wash. So maybe hats are the one category. I just don't think you need to. I would block mittens. I would block cowls. I definitely would block shawls because you're 100% going to get a much nicer, much more beautiful shape from them. And all garments. I mean, I've not made bottoms of any sort, but I would also say bottoms, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, that's all. All right. So thank you. This was a longer episode because I had a lot of stuff to talk about, but thank you for hanging out with me. Let me know what you were working on. Let me know like what's the excitement around your hood for the end of the year. Are you planning anything special end of the year? Are you trying to do a whip down, or are you trying to do a whip down next year in January? I'm interested. I want to know what you're working on. I love getting project ideas from you and hearing what you're working with. If you want to join, we're on the Discord always. I will maybe just take a poll if people want to do a December or skip it. And if we do December, I'll put a date out, you know, dates out soon. So thanks everybody for joining. I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a good one.